welcome to the Tonganoxie City Council meeting. My name is David Freese. I'm the mayor of Tonganoxie, and I open this regular meeting for October 3rd, 2022. Mr. Porter, could you call the roll and note that I'm here, please?
Mr. Partridge. Here. Ms. McCutcheon.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Mr. Donnelly. Here. Mr. Dale.
Here.
All present, Mayor.
Thank you. Would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everyone. Second item on our agenda is the approval of minutes from the regular meeting dated September 19th, 2022. Are there any questions or concern or conversation about the minutes from last meeting? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve is presented.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda, where we review the bill payments for the month. Are there any questions, concerns, or conversation about the bill payments? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Under old business is usually the time where we ask if anyone from the public would like to speak on any topic before the council and the governing body. Is there anyone who signed up before the time, Mr. Porter?
No signups, Mayor.
All right. We'll move on to new business then, which is to have the public hearing, a consideration of 2022 budget amendment to the Water Operations Fund, Sewer Operations Fund, and Capital Projects Fund. Mr. Brakovich, do you want to, or Mr. Porter, do you want to tell us about this, please?
Sure. I'd be glad to do a quick staff presentation. The agenda statement included in the agenda packet for tonight's meeting did include a little bit more detail than I'll go into, but this is necessary to complete a public hearing and then consider adoption of an amended budget to these three funds: the Water Operations Fund, the Sewer Operations Fund, and the Capital Projects Fund. Each of those three funds is budgeted through the state budget forms, and thus, similar to the budget adoption, we must complete a public hearing, consider that input, and then the council can take an action. We're bringing this forward to you based largely upon what-if scenarios. Near the end of the year, we do anticipate that a large customer will be connected to the water and sewer utility at the business park, Hills Pet Nutrition. And while we don't know exactly at this point how much water they'll utilize and how much sewer they'll put back into the system for treatment, we do expect it to be potentially significant. And in that case, the city would be required to purchase additional water that we didn't foresee purchasing from BPU for supply, and also some additional treatment costs like sludge removal, utilities, and other operational costs at the plant. Thus, we've suggested these somewhat minor expenditure increases for the water and sewer operation funds. You'll see that water is being adjusted from $1.553 million for all in 2022 spending to $1.606 million. The sewer operations fund is being increased from $1.192 million to $1.222 million. We'll continue to monitor this as we start making those connections and understanding more about the usage, but we did want to recommend this, and as there's a lag time from our awareness of the need for it and a necessary publication, which we completed on September 21st as required, and then now this public hearing, this is before you tonight for consideration for those two funds. The Capital Projects Fund is proposed to increase expenditure budget from $704,000 to $897,000. And the rationale for that is there been an approved contract for the Church Street Bridge project. As you're all aware, the work for that's expected to commence in November. As we look towards year end, we don't anticipate that the project will be completed before the end of the year, but we do want to have full budget authority should we determine that any of those expenses for the project be charged back to 2022's budget instead of next spring, when we expect a lot of that work will actually take place and the payments will be due. But those are basically true ups. We don't anticipate at this point the need to do any others for other budgeted funds, but happy to take any questions you have about these or any other funds right now.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Are there any questions, council?
Do we need to officially open the public hearing, or is that official rules?
Thank you, Chris, Mr. Donnelly, I appreciate that. Yes, so at this point, then we will open up the public hearing for consideration of 2022 budget amendment to the Water Operations Fund, Sewer Operations Fund, and Capital Projects Fund. Council, any questions?
To open it to everybody.
Yeah, we do things by the book here, that's right. Yeah, council, any questions?
On the water and the sewer, I assume we're expecting offsetting revenues.
We would, yeah, for any,
Anytime the water goes out, somebody's paying for it. And comes back in.
certainly.
And on the capital project funds we adjust for this year, how does that affect next year's budget?
Yes, this change only impacts this year's budget, so any expenditure authority unspent, we do have adequate plans in next year's 2023 budget authority to incorporate the whole of the Church Street Bridge project, should we be delayed and not actually move forward this fall. So in essence, it's budgeted in both years with this adjustment to 2022.
What is the total cost on the Church Street project again?
The contract was approved for 625, roughly, thousand total for the construction. There's still soft costs of about 70 or 80,000 for engineering and construction observation work too. So all in, it comes close to 700,000. Thus, the need to shift from only 704,000 of authority a little higher to accommodate some other costs we have in that fund.
So the math on this will be, this year is higher, next year should be budget low.
We should have excess capacity next year, assuming the project moves forward and spends money this year, yes.
And then our ending balance should be net neutral after 2 years to combine.
Yeah, the cost isn't changing, just potentially the timing of the expense.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll be happy when this is fixed. We can stop talking about the
Yeah.
Church Street Bridge. But I'd have to say it's admirable that you are putting such detailed thought into the timing of this and making this adjustment. So thanks to staff for your extra time on this.
Anyone else care to speak on this in this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll now close the public hearing, and we will move on to item B. Consider approval of 2022 budget amendment to the Water Operations Fund, Sewer Operations Fund, and Capital Projects Fund. Is there any conversation, council, or more questions? If there are none, I would entertain a motion. There is none. If there is none.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 budget amendments to the Water Operations Fund, Sewer Operations Fund, and the Capital Projects Fund as described in the agenda attachment and as published.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item C is a recap of the 2022 Tonganoxie Days community event. Ms. Gee, I believe you're here to speak about this, and Ms. McCutcheon.
Hello. I did prepare a short PowerPoint for Dan, just so you can see a little bit if you were not there. Again, our date obviously was September 17th, and we can go through these fairly quick. And then the schedule event, if you didn't see it, we did have a nice schedule of event out, and so you'll see it later in the budget part that I put in there. Those were also made into postcards, which went out to Grinner Farm and were passed out in thousands. So that was part of our marketing budget we spent this year. And we included table tents at all of our restaurants ahead of time, so that was nice. And then next, Dan, so what I think we do well with this committee is work with other entities so we can keep our costs down and also keep our volunteer pool not overworked as much. So it was nice, we had the rec go ahead and offer to do fireworks. And Dan said he did invite them, and I also talked to Brad, and they plan to do it next year, as long as the budgets hold out and they can get it for about the same cost. It was really nice. It was over, 33 minutes is what we timed. And counting cars, they were between 160 and 180, but there was some in and out, so it was hard to keep track of that. Of course, you don't know how many was in each car, because it was dark and hard to count, but they went by their lots and how many spaces, and they knew how many were full, so that's where they got that number. So it was a good event, and it was kind of fun. That flyer they put out ended up looking just like the picture of what was actually going at one point, so that was from that event, so. And then things we added also was yard games, which we put in Pocket Park to utilize that. And it was fun. The checkers board was up on the picnic tables, and we would see people doing it throughout the day. Best part about it, it's self-contained. We didn't have to have people watching it. So that was important when you have a small pool of volunteers as well. And then next, kid games were done by West Haven. They had 43 tents, I believe they said, and a huge tent where they gave out bags of goodies and things donated from other businesses and from their church. They added bounce houses and slides this year, and they're already talking about adding more next year, so we'll see how that goes. But they're all in. They love it. They went from 250 bags the first year, ran out, to 400, ran out, and they still had time to go. So they're really thrilled to bring that. And you don't need to go back. But the other thing with that is, it used to be at their church, and they did it on a whole weekend, and they've decided they'd just rather have it here at Tongi Days. So that's kind of nice that they moved their whole event to coincide with Tongi Days.
Yeah.
And then we work with other businesses. So that is, the cornhole tournaments were from Around the Horn, which is a training center up on 2440 in the old Vet Vax building. And they did one the night before for adults, and they did one under the tent for the kids the day of. So again, we're incorporating other people and using more resources. And the next one, Dan? We had 58 craft vendors, 4 of which had double spaces. You can see in that picture, it's just full. Credit photo, Alexis, she did a great job. And then the one next to it with the lady is one of our vendors, the Joyful Oak, just explaining how nice it was and how much organization and how great it was. So with our vendors, we do a survey that we hand out asking if they would do it again, if they would pay, what we need to change. Was it successful? Did they make money? And we didn't have a negative comment, so that was really nice. Food vendors, I think we were at 10? 10, give or take one, and then we had 2 vendors, one being 1866, another being another TBA vendor, Twisted Vines, who had adult beverages in the evening, and people sold out. We figured out we need to have evening food vendors now. So after 2 years, we know that's something we need to do. Okay, this year we rented a big tent for the bands to be under. 1, in case the bad weather. 2, it's really hot sometimes. And we used it during the day for the cornhole tournament and other events. So that was nice. The blue tent you see, this year we chose to rent and have someone else come in and do the sound system and the lighting, and that was theirs. They set it up out in the middle, and it was just so nice for us. We didn't have to worry about it when it's not something we know. We wouldn't have a clue how to do that. Well, it's on the next slide. So thank you to Jeremy Albert. He got us 3 bands, which were Switch in Time, Undercover, and the Bob Camler Band, which was really nice. We had a lot of people out kind of dancing and two-stepping and swinging around with the Bob Camler Band, so that was very nice. Jeremy Albert is somebody else who volunteered to help, and he found all of our bands. He set up all the system, the drums, the lighting. All we provided was the asphalt and the tent, so that was very nice. And then we rounded out the day with the weekend with the fire versus police softball game done by the Tonganoxie cheerleading, sponsored by them. So it was really nice. Fire won this year. Sorry, police officers. But they did win by a large amount. So anyway, some takeaways on the next slide. Here's our expenses, and I think it's 5,500 with a little bit of change is what we spent of our $7,500 budget, which we want to hold over for next year because there's some things we want to do. If anyone has questions before we go on, I'll happily answer. Uplift Coffee, if you see that in there, it's 150. Our coffee truck decided they weren't going to do it, and we worked with Grounded, and they said they wanted to have one down here at this end and there, and then they changed their mind. So we had already publicized we were gonna have coffee from 7 a.m. on, so we hired a truck to come in. So that's what that is, an odd amount for us, but we figured we needed to do that. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory on there. We do this on a really small budget considering the event.
I was gonna say, who else has been around? Can't look to Rocky, but when he and I first got on council, and Chris, you would remember, the budget for this was over $10,000. Yeah, I mean, 13 something. But it was a great day. And as a downtown business owner, I know that Grounded Coffee, they had some specials for people. The boutiques were open. They were busy. My small business was busy. We planned events around
Right.
the events that were outside. We had music before and then music after. And people, brought a lot of people to downtown. A lot of people shopped. We
Right.
heard comments like, I didn't know you guys had a downtown. This is really fun. So it was, to know that it was that small of a budget and done that well and that affordably and was good for economic development. I'm super impressed.
Thank you. And on our last slide, it's just next year. We've already chose the date because there's a few things we're trying to nail down already for next year. But we want to continue working. There's a few organizations that have offered to come in. And we want to hire a petting zoo because that's something we normally have. And then the FFA backed out the day before. So there's nothing we can do on that short of notice. So we want to just make sure we have it. And then I mentioned food trucks during the evening. I think that would be good. Vendor section, we could have easily had another 20 people. We just stopped. We had to stop them, cut them off so we knew. Possibly add another band. That was a comment we heard, is that they'd like music during the day. And if we can play music, or not necessarily a DJ, just have it going, start the band a little bit early, but we'd like to hire buskers. You used to be able to get buskers to come in and they do it for tips. That's not how it goes anymore. They just don't want to do that. So there's a few things we want to see, but with our budget we already had asked for, I think we should be good for next year with a little bit of carryover. Anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but you did a really nice job with all that, everybody who was involved.
Thank you.
Very nice to see the downtown crowd, and I will tell you that I had a lot of compliments about the whole program, but a lot of people watched the fireworks from their driveway.
Yes, they did.
They didn't have to go, I mean, I don't know how many people said they were great, they could see them over the trees, and
Yep, it was very nice.
that's giving the community something, not just folks in the parking lot, so.
Right. And I have talked to Brad, and he mentioned that they were gonna try to do I don't think it's a softball tournament, but a tournament they're just now starting, and maybe kick it off on that day instead of a week later. And see.
Great. Thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item D, the city manager agenda. Mr. Brakovich, do you have anything?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So no items listed, but I do want to remind the council, and we'll post this and advertise it, but we are still planning to move forward with a work session before our next city council meeting on October 17th. That work session would be with the library board to discuss what a library district might look like. That's scheduled right now for 5:30 PM, and we're planning to have that at the library. So we'll have to end that meeting in time to get over here for the 7 o'clock. But like I said, we'll make sure we post that appropriately as the time gets near, and we'll get those on your calendars as well. So, thank you. And that's all, Mayor. I don't have any other items tonight.
All right, thank you. City attorney agenda, Ms. Kirstelich? All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem agenda, Ms. Stevens?
I have no items.
Thank you. City council agenda, do you have anything to add to tonight? No. And again, I just want to thank all the hard work that went into Tongy Days. It was just really a great event. Thank you. And I'll cede the rest of my time to Mr. Dale.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Is a motion to adjourn on the table? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Wait.